Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Development Services Committee. My name is John Aker. I chair the committee. I want to introduce the committee members, wonderful group of people. Is to my right, Vice Chair Nestor Pidrebecki, Councillor Dan Carter, Councillor Robert Chapman, Councillor Doug Sanders, and our very good Mayor, Councillor John Henry. We also have visiting councillors today, and I want to welcome them, Councillor Rick Kerr, Councillor Gail Bates. We always welcome them because they are more knowledgeable when these items go to council. I'm going to ask Commissioner Paul Ralph to introduce staff present.
Thank you, Chair Aker. To my right is Laura Davis and Felicia Biancat, both council and committee coordinators. Warren Monroe, our Director of Planning Services. Margaret Kish, a Senior Planner. Robert Beddick, a Senior Planner. Megan Harrington, a Senior Planner. Ranjit Gill, our Transportation Engineer. Jerry Shostowski, our Manager of Administration and Accessibility Services. Susan Ashton, our Manager of Development and Urban Design. Laura Brown, a Planner in Planning Services. And Kyle Benham, our Director of Economic Development Services. Thank you for the opportunity to introduce staff, Chair Aker.
You got everyone? Okay. Okay. Remember, when you're speaking, make sure the mic is on, because this is audio recorded and webcast. To the committee and fellow elected, any declarations of pecuniary interest for this meeting? Councillor Carter.
First of all, good afternoon, Chair Aker. Make a declaration on DS-1826, as I am a member of the VIA and we own property in the vicinity, and therefore make this declaration. The form has been submitted, Mr. Chair.
What item is that on the agenda?
It is in our closed portion, I believe, of the report, sir. Thank you.
That's helpful. Councillor Chapman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have a declaration for the closed meeting as well. DS number 18-04, Frank Allen requesting approval in principle for an Aviation Heritage Museum Center. I'm the Honorary Lieutenant Colonel of the Ontario Regiment, a member of the Regiment's Museum, which is located in the south field of the Oshawa Airport, and approval of this may have a negative or positive effect on the museum.
Thank you.
And I've submitted the form to the clerk.
Thank you. Now, with that, we can move directly to delegations. Councillor Pidrebecki, do you have a motion?
I do, Mr. Chairman. The delegations of Derrick Reeve and Jane Clark be heard.
To the committee, all in favor? Carried. Would the, I'm assuming they're going to speak together. No, they're speaking separately, okay. Would Derrick Reeve come forward? Now, welcome, Derrick. You're going to have to push that little purple button there. That's, yes.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman. My name is Derrick Reeve, and I come to you on behalf of my fellow committee members from Heritage Oshawa. Thank you for allowing us to be part of your discussion today on the property in question at 195 Simcoe Street North. The mandate of Heritage Oshawa is to advise and assist Council on matters of cultural heritage value and interest, including the designation of heritage properties and heritage conserved districts, and such other heritage conservation issues as Council may specify by bylaw. As part of that mandate, in accordance with bylaw number 2-2011, we undertake, among other things, to 1. Establish criteria for the evaluation of properties of cultural heritage value or interest. 2. Prepare and maintain a list of heritage resources, including buildings, structures, and other elements which are considered to be of cultural heritage. 3. Advise the Council on means of conserving heritage properties and districts. 4. Review development applications involving matters of heritage preservation and provide recommendations to Council. 5. Provide recommendations to the Council on properties worthy of heritage designation. And 6. Advise and assist Council on all matters relating to cultural heritage, including but not limited to buildings and structures, cultural landscapes, and archaeological sites. Mr. Chairman, Ontario Regulation 9-06 under the Ontario Heritage Act sets out the criteria for determining cultural value or interest which is required in order to designate a property under the provisions of Part 4 of the Act. A property may be designated under Section 29 of the Act if it meets one or more of the following criteria for determining whether it is of cultural heritage value or interest. The property has design value or physical value because it, A, is a rare, unique, representative, or early example of a style, type, expression, material, or construction method. B, displays a high degree of craftsmanship or artistic merit. Or C, demonstrates a high degree of technical or scientific achievement. Number 2, the property has historical value or associative value because it A, has direct associations with a theme, event, belief, person, activity, organization, or institution that is significant to a community. B, yields or has the potential to yield information that contributes to an understanding of a community or culture. Or C, demonstrates or reflects the work or ideas of an architect, artist, builder, designer, or theorist who is significant to a community. And finally, 3, the property has contextual value because it is A, important in defining, maintaining, or supporting the character of an area. B, is physically, functionally, visually, or historically linked to its surroundings. Or C, is a landmark. Mr. Chairman, the City of Oshawa Register of Properties of Cultural Heritage Value or Interest, herein called the Register, is a list of properties that have been formally recognized by Council pursuant to Section 27 of the Ontario Heritage Act as being properties within the City of Oshawa having cultural heritage value or interest. The Register includes both designated and non-designated properties. The inventory includes all properties on the register as well as properties identified as Class A or Class B. Class A properties are properties that have been evaluated by Heritage Oshawa and are determined to have the highest potential for designation. Class B properties are properties that have been evaluated by Heritage Oshawa and are determined to have good potential for designation. Mr. Chairman, the property in question is located at 195 Simcoe Street North on the northeast corners of Simcoe Street North and Elgin Street East. The property is currently listed as a Class A property on the City of Oshawa's registry and is inventory number 339 for your reference. Mr. Chairman, on April 27, 2017, a delegation of Sherlyn Changer addressed Heritage Oshawa concerning a potential demolition permit applications for 195 and 201 Simcoe Street North. Mr. Changer noted that as the owner of these buildings, he wishes to redevelop the lands as opposed to maintaining them as heritage sites. He noted that in his opinion, given the current state of the buildings, it would be very expensive for them to be repaired back to a state of heritage value. The senior planner provided a presentation on a demolition application for both 195 Simcoe Street North and 201 Simcoe Street North and noted that the building listed at 195 Simcoe Street North is listed as a Class A property on the Heritage Oshawa inventory, was constructed in 1887, and that no research report had been completed. The senior planner also noted that the home has been known as the R.S. McLaughlin home. The senior planner also advised that 201 Simcoe Street North is listed as a Class B property on the Heritage Oshawa inventory, was constructed in 1890, and that no research report had been completed. Mr. Chairman, a motion was brought forth at the meeting on the 27th of April 2017 that Heritage Oshawa was not in favor of the demolition of 195 and 201 Simcoe Street North, and that these properties be considered instead for adaptive reuse rather than demolition. It was further moved that the Heritage Oshawa engage a consultant to undertake a heritage report for the properties at 195 Simcoe Street North and 201 Simcoe Street North to more fully determine the heritage value of these structures. This motion was carried. On May 25, 2017, Mr. Chairman, Heritage Oshawa voted on a motion to remove 201 Simcoe Street North from the Heritage Research Report and keep 195 Simcoe Street North as the sole subject of the Heritage Research Report. This motion was also carried. On December 14, 2017, Heritage Oshawa moved that report HTG-17-86 concerning the research report for the McLaughlin House located at 195 Simcoe Street North be added to the Heritage Oshawa agenda. That motion was also carried. It was moved at that time that Heritage Oshawa recommends to the Development Service Committee that Heritage Oshawa has received a research report on 195 Simcoe Street North former home of Robert McLaughlin, founder of the McLaughlin Carriage Company, and father of Colonel R.S. McLaughlin, founder of General Motors Canada. And that the report demonstrates that 195 Simcoe Street North meets the criteria under Regulation 9/06 for designation, and that the property has design and physical value because the building contains examples of colonial revival design in the central front entranceway with transom, return to eaves, the front facade containing a 3-bay design, and that the property has associated value as it was the home of Robert McLaughlin, founder of the McLaughlin Carriage Company, and a family which had tremendous economic impact on the growth of Oshawa. And that the property has contextual value because 195 Simcoe Street North is important in defining, maintaining, and supporting the area in which it stands because it is one of the early homes constructed on Simcoe Street North, which is reflective of Oshawa's early settlers and the beginnings of development in the part of the city. And finally, that this property was also home to the 11th mayor of the town of Oshawa, Mr. R.H. James, in 1921, and remained in the James family until the 1950s. It was also moved at that meeting that we felt so strongly about this need for designation that a representative from Heritage Oshawa attend the Development Service Committee as a delegation to speak about the committee's position regarding the designation of 195 Simcoe Street North. In light of the findings of the Heritage Research Report, Mr. Chairman, Heritage Oshawa is of the opinion that the house located at 195 Simcoe Street North report meets the criteria outlined in Regulation 9/06 of the Ontario Heritage Act and should be considered for designation as we have so moved. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Grieve. Now, first to the committee. Any questions of Mr. Grieve, the delegation? If not, to visiting councillors, any questions? Councillor Bates.
Thank you, Chair Aker. Just a question, Mr. Grieve. Doesn't the owner of the property have to want the Heritage Research Report?
No, Heritage Oshawa can undergo the process to get the research report to determine its viability to be designated for.
Right. But if the owner doesn't want it designated, it doesn't have to be done, even though it has a research report and is a heritage property.
Our mandate is not to determine whether or not the owner of the property wants a designation or not. It's to simply determine the property on its merits, whether it would be considered for designation under Section 906.
That's great. Thank you.
Just further to Councillor Bates, does the owner know Heritage Oshawa is proposing it for a designation?
I don't know whether or not they're aware.
Thank you. That's fair. Thank you, Mr. Grieve. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah. Now, next we have Ms. Jane Clark.
She has a presentation.
Okay. Good. Now, so she's all set. We're going to turn the lights down. Welcome, Ms. Clark.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Let's see if I'm up and running here. Escape. Ha. Greetings. Greetings to the chair, to the councillors, and to you, Mr. Mayor, and to all the visitors here today. I would like to thank you for letting us present on Robert McLaughlin House. I am a member of Heritage Oshawa, but I am not presenting on behalf of Heritage Oshawa today. Derrick did a great job doing that. I am here representing the interests and wishes of my fellow residents of Oshawa, and all these comments are my own and my own research. To borrow Councillor Kerr's expression, I believe that conserving the Robert McLaughlin House is a hill to die on. So this is a look at the the south facade of the house. As you see, it's built around 1887. Derrick did a great job going through the reasons for designation. Here's another couple of historic photos of the house. Yes, there have been a few alterations to it. The house was the residence of not one mayor, Mr. James, but two mayors. Mr. McLaughlin was also mayor of Oshawa. I don't think anyone who knows anything about the history of Oshawa would doubt that Robert McLaughlin is a key figure in its history and its legacy. Quite likely no one in the room would even be here today without him. His contributions are of national significance, and his influence extends well beyond the city's boundaries. I believe this photo was not taken at 195 Simcoe, but my guess is that it was at 337 Simcoe, which was his final home. The date on this is approximately early 20s, and he died in 1921. So this is probably his final home, which is a little further up Simcoe. So we have one more of, I think this is him sitting as mayor with a quote. This is the caption. And that is some chair. So here are various views of the house today. This is one of only four, the only one of four homes that Robert McLaughlin lived in Oshawa that remains standing. So it is the only physical representation of this founder of Oshawa. The others were at Athol and Albert, 57 Colburn, and 337 Simcoe. So here's the Simcoe site. Here's the Colburn site. We haven't done a very good job of taking care of Robert McLaughlin's legacy, in my opinion, so far, but perhaps we can redeem ourselves now. So let's take a look at the neighborhood. This is the house immediately to the north, the one that the same owner owns and is part of the package of this property of 4 residences. And here's a map I created that shows Bond Street up to Adelaide. And in this 6 blocks, we have 16 properties on our heritage inventory. 7 of these, the ones in orange, are Class A, which is the most likely to qualify for designation. So this neighborhood is very stable, attractive. The homes, which were all residences, were built in the late 1800s through to the 1920s. It's consistent in style, form, and use. I'm calling this area Doctor's Row because I'm sure I'm not the only person in this room who went to Doctor's Row, this 6 blocks, to be treated for various medical things by some of Oshawa's well-known medical professionals. In my case, that includes Charlie McElveen, who delivered me, both Langmaid brothers, who worked on my teeth, and later Dr. Wagman, who's now at 167, where the Langmaids were. So here's what I call the view corridor, looking south from Adelaide. So I am standing at Parkwood, right at the corner at the fence. And this is the cross street of Adelaide. And you can see the McLaughlin house in the White House. So we have brick, white, brick, 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 white. And so that's the McLaughlin house there. So this is how close it is to Parkwood, and it represents the link to Parkwood, which is, of course, a National Historic Site. Now, I just want to zip down Simcoe here, south, and we're just going to take a quick flying look at the existing buildings on this stretch and note how many are examples, good examples of adaptive reuse. This is not always the case. Some are more successful and more sympathetic to their context than others, as you will see. This is an excellent example, and that's right at the corner, southeast corner. And you'll note I've included when they are Class A or B and their use if I knew. That's the line mates. Okay, so this I'm considering the lower end, the south end of this neighborhood, the Doctors Row neighborhood. And the neighborhood forms a smooth blended transition from commercial to residential north along Simcoe. Fittingly, it's bookended at this end by two more McLaughlin-related properties, the Carriage Works on the right and the Armory on the left. So I'd like to address, oh, there's one more picture of the Carriage Works here. I'd like to address some possible concerns you may have about designation of 195 Simcoe. First is condition, and by the way, let me throw in, no, it is not required that an owner support designation of their property if it is in the best interests of the municipality and the citizens to preserve a cultural heritage asset, then designation should move forward, which is what we are arguing today. So condition, it's true that the interior is in poor condition. However, as is clear in the municipal mandate, condition is not a factor in determining cultural heritage value. In fact, there are examples of designated properties which are ruins or cemeteries, et cetera, so it does not have to be in livable condition at the time of designation. While the condition of the interior of all four subject properties is extremely poor, and that is 195, 201, and the same owner owns the first two properties east on Elgin. I believe it's 16 and 18. Oh, thank you, 212 and 216. So the interiors are in poor condition in each of these four properties, which to me speaks to the owner's care and respect for Oshawa, its residents, the neighborhood, municipal property standards, and heritage assets. But the house itself is of very sturdy construction. And I'll point out that, as was the case with another designated property, the Genasha Hotel, the condition of the interior actually assists with proposed adaptive reuse, as there is little to preserve and it can be reconfigured as desired by the next owner. As to concerns about the owner filing a possible dispute with the OMB over designation or not agreeing to sever the property to save 195, this is speculation, and I very much doubt that an owner with such a poor record on maintaining his properties would go to that expense if he is, as I understand, even unwilling to pay to have them demolished. If an owner were, however, to go to the OMB about the McLaughlin house, I believe that the people of Oshawa would support the city's case for designation. About designation impeding sales of commercial properties or any properties, The owner may have the usual misconceptions about designation making properties more difficult to sell. However, studies prove this wrong. Designation helps properties hold their value even in an economic downturn. This is from the Oshawa website. A recent survey has shown that most designated properties performed better than average in the real estate market. Now, this is my personal feeling. Sometimes the easiest option is not the right option. Property rights are important, and I understand the reluctance to impinge on an owner's property rights, but sometimes the common good and the public interest must override them. Let's put this property forward for designation and let the public weigh in on something that may matter to them very much. A quick scan of the various Oshawa blogs and Facebook pages confirms that Oshawa and its stories are still important to long-term residents, and the stories explain the history to new residents and why these places are important. And it has to be about more than money. A few weeks ago, this committee heard Mr. Peacock make a presentation in support of protecting the Second Marsh and its neighborhood. It's not always easy to quantify the value of places of cultural heritage significance, such as the Marsh and Robert McLaughlin House. Their value to Oshawa and its citizens is not just as sites of potential future development and sources of tax income, but for what significance they and the stories they tell to the people of Oshawa. There's a reason why heritage assets are called resources, and many Ontario towns have benefited economically from their good stewardship of their heritage properties. This property is not a burden, it's an economic development opportunity. This is from the Ontario government's Heritage Toolkit. Quote, "The greenest building is the one that already exists. Heritage conservation saves demolition, land development, and construction time costs. It helps retain or create high-skilled jobs. It develops the market value of existing buildings and neighborhoods while contributing to economic development such as cultural tourism. Rehabilitating heritage streetscapes and buildings, sometimes starting with the restoration of a single community landmark, can generate a whole range of economic benefits." Now I'm going to move on here. This is from the Heritage Oshawa bylaw, and this building qualifies as a Group 1 building, in other words, of major significance and importance. Note my highlighting about development incorporating heritage buildings and finding appropriate alternative uses for these buildings. On alternative uses, or adaptive reuse as it's called, I would like to quote Mr. Bob Bell, who I'm sure many of you are familiar with. He is a realtor who is familiar with this property, and this is what he had to say about it. Quote, "I think an adaptive reuse of the building would be the best option. The property is a gateway property separating the commercial and residential. Rather than a hard shift from one to another zone, I like a blending. This property, and indeed the one to the north, that's 201, could serve this purpose. I work at Coldwell Banker 2M Realty Brokerage at the other end of this same block. It is a fantastic example of adaptive reuse, as is the property to the south of our office. If the two properties on the south end of this block were to be converted to, for example, offices, it would nicely bookmark the block. It would serve as a great showcase example of sensible change, recognizing history, and also changing times. The two properties on Elgin are on small lots. In a commercial adaptive reuse development of the Simcoe properties, they could be torn down for parking. The north property on Simcoe has a large lot that runs behind the Elgin ones. The McLaughlin property is smaller. Another option, of course, is just to sever the McLaughlin one and save just it." And here's a picture of the parking. This is behind 201 and 195 Simcoe, looking east. And those two buildings that you see on the right, the two residences, are the two houses that the same owner owns on Elgin. So this large parking area serves all four buildings, and there is plenty of space if it were to be adaptively reused.
Ms. Clark,
Yes.
we have a 10-minute time limit.
Yes,
You are well past it.
I am?
Yes.
Oh, excuse me.
Do you have much more?
I do. I'll wrap things up.
Thank you.
As you know, it's the stated goal of the province to preserve significant built heritage resources. It is important to designate for the following reasons, which are listed on the Oshawa website. It strengthens community identity, acknowledges our past while providing a link to the future, contributes to the local quality of life, conserves irreplaceable, highly visible heritage resources, and communicates pride in our heritage. If the city designates, this gives the next owner access to the Heritage Property Tax Reduction Program as well. I will just point out that of the 5 must-see properties listed on the Heritage Oshawa tourism webpage, 4 of them are McLaughlin related, and this could easily be a 5th. It could easily be a future Doors Open site, and it could be incorporated into a lot of tourism opportunities. Anyway, there are any number of possible bright, attractive, productive futures for the Robert McLaughlin House, but there's no future unless this property is designated and thereby protected. Exploring these options will take vision and creativity and may take more time, but that time must be balanced against what will be irretrievably lost if the McLaughlin House is not protected. Designation keeps all options open. Otherwise, this resource and its economic potential will be lost. Historic preservation is a game of attrition. No one's building any more historic 1880s properties. There is no second chance to preserve historic structures or reap any future benefits once they're gone. Let's try to work together with the building owners, stakeholders, and neighbors and council to preserve, protect, and restore this critical piece of our shared history. All of us here have pledged to serve the best interests of the people and municipality of Oshawa. In this case, the best way forward is to protect both the city's past and its future, and to designate the Robert McLaughlin House. Thank you for your courage and vision, and for seeing the stories of Oshawa living far into the future.
Thank you, Ms. Clark. We're going to put the lights on. Now, to the good committee. Questions of Ms. Clark. Councillor Carter.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Good afternoon, and thank you very much for your presentation. I don't know if you have a copy of this report, but I'm just trying to... There's been significant changes to this house, though, has there not?
There have been alterations. However, they have not affected the 3 categories of I'm losing my value. That's the word I'm after.
I've been going back and forth to try and figure out what has been changed, but it looks like there's been significant changes on the house from what it appears like today and what it was, I guess, originally. So how does that affect does the owner now, if it's designated, it has to go back to its original state? Is that correct?
No. Oh, no, not at all.
They can go ahead and do what they wish with it?
Well, if it is designated, it is part of designation that the owner keeps it up to a standard that of anyone's home. And I don't think there are a lot of homes in this town or any town that haven't changed since the 1880s. However, the physical attributes are only one of the 3 categories of value, and the contextual and associative values are very strong in this case, and so physical is sort of the 3rd most important.
So you made a statement about leaving the house as part of leaving it as it is and trying to look at it as a new purpose that it could be utilized. So with that parking lot, would people be upset if it turned into a Tim Hortons?
I would be upset if it turned into
Yeah,
a
no,
Tim Hortons.
I guess.
I think a lot of people in Oshawa would be upset, yes, especially
And-
once they learn about it.
Right. And you said you spoke to a Mr. Bob Bell, is that correct?
Correct, yes.
And who is he?
He's a real estate representative in Oshawa.
Robert Bell. Oh,
Yeah,
okay, Robert.
he actually is in that first
yeah,
house
okay.
on the corner.
Sorry, I don't
which
know
is
him
now-
as Bob. I know him as Robert Bell, but not Bob Bell. I was going to ask you if he was interested in buying it, so I just didn't know that. So in your opinion, and I'm just looking at our report here, and it's on page 23, and I don't know if you have it, that the picture that is here and the picture that is in our report, to me, and I'm just wondering if you might be able to help me, is significantly different. Is significant. This
Okay,
here
so you're looking at
compared to this.
two different views. Sorry, you're looking at two different views of the house, for one thing.
What view is this?
That is looking sort of straight at the corner of Simcoe and Elgin, so that's the western elevation.
And this is,
that is the south elevation, and that is the east elevation.
so is this top one and this one the same?
No,
So this is, I'm sorry, this here is on the corner
yes.
of
so you
Elgin
can,
and Simcoe.
correct, so you can see the west and the south elevations in the
And-
historic photo.
And is this not Elgin here and Simcoe here?
That is
So
the south.
this one and this one are the same.
Well, it doesn't show the west elevation, which the historic photo shows.
It-
Carter, if you go to page 23,
Yeah, I've got 23.
yeah, and then you look at page 20 at the bottom picture, that's actually the same view of the house. On page 23, the front porch was wood and it came off, and in place they built the portico. Otherwise, the house is pretty much extant in those two pictures, except for being yellow brick and now painted.
Yeah, it's white brick, and okay. That's the back of this. Okay. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Any
Thank
other
you.
questions? Visiting councilors, any questions? Okay. Thank you, Ms. Clark.
Thank you very much.
We have one other item, and then we'll be back to your item. Now, to the Good Committee. We've had two delegations. Next, we have correspondence from Signum Wireless requesting exemption from public consultation process for a proposed telecommunication tower. Now, if you could take a look at 1 to 4, pages 1 to 4, we'll see the correspondence. I think it's 1 to 4. And I gotta find it here. Give me a second. There we are. Okay, now, to the Good Committee. Our process is fairly routine. We have a public meeting. We listen to people that come to it. We've all been through it lots of times. And then it goes to staff. The staff come back with a recommendation. Okay? Now, let's just do this. Now, the difference of this one is, let me just go through it. If you can look to page 3, those are some proposed towers. Thank you. So because it's basically going to be the entrance or near the Marina Harbor. If you flip the page over, you can see it is on City of Oshawa property, and I would say, in my humble opinion, remote from any, well, certainly remote from any residential, but remote from any other land uses. The other big land use is the Harbor Commission. So, with that, our good vice chair, supported by the commissioner, has two motions, and then I want to tell you what they are, and then we can decide as a committee which way we want to go. So let's do it. The first motion is that that the request for a public meeting, the exemption for a public meeting is approved, and that the proposed lease request be referred to staff for report. That's one, okay? That's basically saying we have a process, but does the process warrant it when it's this remote? Or the second one